Whew. All right. What's going on, YouTube? How y'all doing? Another day? Yeah, y'all guessed it. Another video. Now, today's video is going to be very, very fun because I've been wanting to talk about this setup ever since I got it in, but kind of took my time, wanted to get some real range time with it first before I actually gave you guys a review. So without further ado, let's intro this thing. Today, we're going to be talking about my Sig MCX Spear LT. This is my 11.5 5.56 pistol, and I've been dying to talk about this one. This gun is, man, let's get into this video. Now, y'all know the drill. Before we get started, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure the gun is clear, empty mag, nothing going on here. Y'all see it? I'm gonna go ahead and pull the bolt back. Everything's good. It's on safe, as you guys can clearly see right there. Yep, so let's get into it. All right, so the LT Spear, or Spear LT, a lot of people always say I'm either the other way around or whatever the case may be, but I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you kind of have an idea of what this gun is, but if you don't, this is the 3rd generation MCX coming out of Sig. This is the successor to the Virtus, I believe. I've never held one, so I don't know exactly how that feels or the whole history behind the line. This is my first Sig rifle ever. And so far, I mean, I've really been a fan of it. I know typically what they do is they take the problems that they had from the previous generation and kind of improve on them with their 3rd and ongoing generations of their rifles. And from my understanding, this is no exception. I know a lot of people talk about the Virtus and they said, well, biggest shortcoming of it was the weight. I've never held one, so I can't tell you if that's true or not, but pretty much how I feel about this thing is that it is really light. At least is how I feel on it, compared to other piston guns, because this is a piston-driven AR-15. It is not a direct impingement like your standard AR-15 setups, which, if you don't know about piston guns, typically their shortcoming is that they're heavy in the front, or they're just heavy in general, because it's not like a direct impingement gun where it had that weight balancing capabilities. A lot of the party on these piston-driven guns are in the front, so that kind of brings up a lot of the issues with the weight. Now, just on my setup right now, because I don't really have anything going with it, all I have is a hand stop in the front. I don't really feel any of those weight issues. When I put a light on it, maybe. I don't run nods because I don't shoot at night, or what do they call it, with night vision. So I won't experience any of that, because night vision shooting is a whole different bag that I'm not willing to get into right now. So I don't think I'm gonna have to worry about a lot of those weight problems. That being said, it is a little different from my DI 5.56 gun. Obviously, when we talk about the weight, because while it is light, at least to me it is a little bit heavy in the front compared to my 5.56 DI. And that has a light on it, and it has a bunch of other stuff on the front. So that is the only difference between the two, at least in the weight category, that they are weighted a little bit differently. So I definitely did notice that. But regardless of that, when it comes to shooting, I think this thing is a way, way better shooter. Talking about this thing in particular, again, it is a gas piston driven system. I think it's a short stroke gas piston system. I'm not the technological guy when it comes to describing DI versus piston. I can kind of explain the difference between the two, but I'm not the guy that you really want to rely on when it comes to that kind of information. So just gonna throw that out there. I'm not gonna really talk about that, but I will say that it is a better and nicer shooter than my DI 5.56. This gun is soft shooting, and I think that's kind of where the piston versus DI arguments kind of come from, is the shooting experience between the two. So this is a softer shooter. I have not shot a DI 5.56 gun that shoots softer than this. And even mine, that is set up for suppression, so that one is tuned to perfection, at least in my book. Even compared to that tuned gun, it still doesn't shoot as soft as this. So this is definitely where piston-driven guns are kind of beating out the DI stuff, just in the shooting experience. Now, let's get into my reasons for picking one of these up. So when I bought one of these, I've wanted a piston-driven gun for quite some time. And I did a bunch of research. I was looking at PWS. I know they have a series. I was looking at a Bren 2 CZ. I love CZ. So I was like, okay, the Bren 2. But I was kind of going back and forth. I know people were recommending, I think, LWRC or LMT. I know they kind of have a piston-driven system set up as well, but I don't know. Like I said, I wanted something that was a little bit different than a regular standard AR-15, and that ultimately X'd out LMT, that X'd out PWS, because I think PWS is a long struggle system as well. So again, not really technical as far as the differences between all these setups, but those two were already eliminated because, again, I wanted something that was different from my no straight off the presses or straight off the wall AR-15. So that's kind of where I went to the Bren 2 or the Spear. Deciding between the Spear and the Bren 2, my driving factor was cost, ease of use, parts availability, etc., etc. Something that was a little easier to find and something that was a little bit better for me to use on an everyday basis. Now, I don't use it on an everyday basis, but something that if I wanted to use it, I could. The Bren 2, really nice gun. I like it. I was able to see both of these in store. I actually live nearby a gun range and a gun store that had both of these in stock, and I was able to see it because I wanted an 11-inch setup. When I held the Bren 2, I loved how it felt, but I did a lot of research, and a lot of people who own Bren 2s, they say that parts availability for that gun and aftermarket support is little to non-existent. For me, that was an issue, considering the fact that we never know how these guns are. We never know how these parts, fail or whatever the case may be. Guns are mechanical. Sometimes you can't always catch the failure points or the bad batches when you're doing a commercial pretty much gun. So I didn't really want to deal with that if it was going to be a hard time for me to get parts if something was to fail. And that's kind of what X'd me out of the Bren 2. On top of the fact that the Bren didn't really have the aftermarket support. I know HB Industries supports them in. I've had CZ products before. I have a P01. I've had a Scorpion before. So I know about HB Industries. I know they're a really good, great company, really good team over there. But if the manufacturer of the gun shows little to no love to it, that kind of drives me away from wanting to buy a product from you, because at the end of the day, it's your firearm. We should not have to rely on the aftermarket to keep your gun alive. So while I did like the Bren, that kind of killed it for me. But just seeing how CZ kind of treats the Bren, and I really didn't want to deal with those problems when they came up. So it is what it is. So ultimately, the Spear won. Now, here's the thing about the Spear and just Sig in general. I know a lot of people who have Spears or are fan of Sig or whatever. I've heard it all. I know Sig is notorious for building something, selling something, marketing products, everything under the sun, and then out of nowhere, just stop supporting it. I think they did that with the Virtus, which is why a lot of people say stay away from the Virtus, because the parts for it is no longer available, or you're gonna have to go through a lot of bullshit to get those parts in. So I went into this kind of knowing that Sig may pull a stunt and say, you know what, we're over this gun, we're gonna move on to our next one. But what kind of kept me into still buying it was the fact that this was actually picked up by the military. So not this variant in particular, but the actual Sig Spear line pretty much won the military contract. And that is kind of what said, you know what, I think that despite their history, I'm gonna give them a shot, because if the military is using your firearm, that tells me that you care at least somewhat to keep it going. Now, to be clear, I did hear through the grapevine that the military or some military agencies actually have returned their Spears. So I don't have any information on that. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just going based off what I heard. It could be true, it could be false. But that being said, this is a really popular gun, so I wanted to give it a shot, especially for my first Sig rifle. I do have a Sig pistol, but for the rifle, this is kind of my first go at it. So I figured if anything was wrong with it, or if I didn't end up liking it, I could sell it to some fanboy or some hype beast and pretty much get back what I paid for it. So I said, why not? Let's go ahead and try it out. All right, talking about my first 500 rounds with this gun, because I did put 500 rounds through it. Man, first impressions, this thing was amazing. I really don't know how to explain this gun, but it is really, really soft shooting. I mean, I talk about recoil is negligent. It is almost little to none. It's super fun to shoot. Half the time, I don't even realize that I pull the trigger because it's so soft. Now, I say that because the trigger on this thing is, it's cool. It does the job, but it's not the best trigger. But despite that, this gun is really soft shooting. I really don't know how to explain it. It's like shooting on a cloud. Again, compared to my DI 5.56 that is tuned, this thing shoots softer than that. I had a hell of a time shooting it. It's a really nice shooting gun, just to be honest with y'all. Now, I put about 150 rounds through it unsuppressed. Then I went ahead and started shooting it suppressed, because that's kind of what piston-driven guns are kind of known for, is how they act when you suppress them. Talking about this thing, because I know the biggest discussion point around this gun is the egregious process to remove the muzzle device on these things. Now, I have a Rearden RPB on mine because, like I said in my previous videos, I'm a fan of Rearden. That's who I use for all my suppressors. I went ahead and did that and put it on there. But I've seen the reports, I read the reviews. I know people who talk about that their muzzle devices from factory were a pain in the fucking ass to remove. I know some people who said they had no problems. I know some people who said they had to cut their muzzle devices. I believe it's a Sig muzzle device because in Sig fashion, they want you to buy a Sig suppressor when you pick one of these up. And that's cool, but I'm sorry, Sig, I don't like y'all that much to buy a rifle from y'all and a suppressor from y'all. I'm sorry. So I went ahead and just had my homie who actually got this for me because I wanted one for a while, and I told him, okay, well, I don't want to pay the crazy price, but he owns a shop. So he was like, bro, I can get it for you for the low. Shout out to you, bro. Appreciate it. And he got me a really, really good price on this thing, which is what drew me to actually buy it. Because if I had to pay the $2,700, $2,800, $3,000 for this thing, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But he gave me the homie deal. So I went ahead and copped it. And when he did get it in his store, I told him, hey, bro, just go ahead, put the muzzle device on here, put the Rearden muzzle device on there before I come pick it up. He did that for me. So I didn't go through any of the rigorous, I guess you can say, pipelines to take that stupid ass muzzle device off. My homie said he didn't really have any problems with it, but then again, he has an MCX Virtus, so he's kind of familiar with Sig's game. So that's pretty much why I think he didn't really have any problems. So, you know, it is what it is. So shooting this thing suppressed, I actually shot it with my Lahar 30, which unfortunately, I don't have my Lahar right now. It's at Arrow getting arm-made for reasons that I will not talk about in this video, but I'm just gonna say, thank you, AAC. You guys make some of the worst ammo I've ever seen in my life. Thank you for that. But I went ahead and shot with my Lahar at first because at the time I didn't have my Liberty Precision Machine Torch, which is the can that I kind of use on this primarily. I did hear the rumblings about this gun being really gassy. I guess that's a really big point on the MCX line, is that their guns are super duper gassy. They're overgassed as shit. So suppressing them is not fun. And that kind of draws into where people are saying that Sig put that muzzle device on there because they want you to buy one of their suppressors, which I guess is kind of flow through-esque. I'm being careful with that because Huxworks is already going for Silencer Co. with the Velos because of the flow through stuff. So I'm kind of being careful. So I'm gonna say gas mitigating suppressors that Sig made for this thing. I will say with my Lahar, while it was gassy, because I did shoot it indoors. I typically shoot outdoors, but over the last couple months, I've been having to shoot indoors. I did shoot it with my Lahar, and while it was gassy, it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad at all. I didn't have that many problems shooting this thing suppressed. with my Lahar on there while I was waiting for my LPM torch. That being said, they are not lying when they say that this gun has some gassy properties about it. It craves a flow through or gas mitigating suppressor. It really does crave it. So I went ahead and picked up the Liberty Precision Machine torch for it, and that's actually what I shoot on it primarily. And the reason that I got this can for it is because this can it's pretty much like a 2-in-1. It is a can that has a solid end cap. So if you want to shoot like a regular traditional baffle style on a regular DI gun that's tuned already, you can go ahead and change the end cap on this thing. But if you have a gun that craves the gas be pushed out or is an overgassed bitch, you can go ahead and change out the end cap to their vintage style, which is this one, and it'll kind of mitigate the gas to a way better level. So while I was waiting for this can to get out, which by the way, because of the new Form 4 times, I got this thing back in 2 days. It's crazy. My Form 3 took longer than the Form 4 for this. Craziest shit ever, swear to God. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen because my other cans took about 5-ish, 6 months, and this thing came back in 2 days and 16 hours. So that was really cool to get back. Now shooting this thing with the LPM torch, it made it that much better. It was really craving that flow through style suppressor that it desperately wanted to kind of push that gas out the front. That being said, I still got some gas back to the face, but here's the thing about that. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about that. I'm a left-handed shooter, I'm a lefty. So if you shoot left-handed and if you look at any other guns, there's really no way to mitigate 100% gas out of your face because the operation and the ejection of everything with the gun is on this side. So you're not gonna be able to kind of mitigate your gas 100%. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to take some to the face. Pause.
That was crazy. That was crazy.
But I mean, it is what it is. It wasn't that bad. It was actually a really cool setup. I love it. I use my spear and the torch together pretty much exclusively. I did shoot this with my Wolfman as well, and it's just fine. It wasn't that gassy. It was actually very manageable. So I'd say it's a luck of the draw. Depending on what can you get, that's gonna pretty much determine how your gas output is for you. So, you know, you'll have to kind of pick and choose and kind of play around with it a little bit. Now let's talk about the differences between this and a standard AR-15, because despite what it looks like, this is not an AR-15, okay? This is kind of a derivative of I believe the AR-18. So this has AR-15-esque properties, but do not get confused. This is not an AR-15. A lot of parts for this gun are kind of exclusive. You won't be able to kind of mix and match a lot of AR-15 parts with this. There are some parts that are just fine. So what I did was I went ahead and put Radiant Talon safety selectors on there. So that's interchangeable with an AR-15. The grip is also interchangeable with AR-15s. The trigger, not entirely sure about that. I haven't looked that far into it. I'm not sure if a regular AR-15 trigger will work like this or work with this. I haven't tried it. Who knows? It may not. But I think that's pretty much where it ends. I went ahead and changed out my charging handle as well. So this is a Radiant Raptor charging handle, but this is MCX exclusive. So you cannot buy a regular Radiant charging handle and put it in here. They won't work together. The bolts for this thing is exclusive to this gun. I mean, like I said, there's some parts on this that you just won't be able to interchange with AR-15s, which is gonna go into my cons into this gun for people who are looking. Now, because I am honest with y'all, we are gonna get into the cons or the shortcomings of this gun. And a lot of the cons are kind of gonna be around the compatibility parts and what is interchangeable with this gun and what is not. So you guys already heard me say what is not interchangeable, but this thing, like I said, is just not a AR-15. So a lot of AR-centric parts are not gonna work with this thing. So that's kind of annoying. So I'm gonna kind of ding it for that. Again, even though this is clearly not an AR-15, they kind of make it look like one. So if you're not familiar with this stuff, or if you're not familiar around the MCX line, you might get confused. You might buy parts that you think may work, but actually won't. So it's kind of a con, not for me, but it may be for someone else. The next con for me, but in particular, is the gas block on this thing. So if you look right here, this gun has a gas block. It is a 2-position gas block, and it's really set up so where you can actually use an actual round to kind of adjust it. You can adjust it with your hands, but a round will kind of give you that leverage that it requires to kind of change it. It is a 2-position gas block though. So you can't change this out as far as I know right now. So the 2 that you get, you're stuck with that. And unfortunately, that kind of sucks. And the reason that it kind of sucks because, once again, I shoot suppressed. So there's only a normal setting and an adverse setting. I know a lot of people like to say that it is a suppressed and unsuppressed setting, but if you look in the manual that Sig put with this gun, they say it's for shooting in harsh conditions. It's not for shooting or changing the gas for suppressor use on these guns. So typically people say that it's only used for hotter ammo or weaker ammo that kind of requires that little pick-me-up. So depending on what kind of suppressor you use, you might be a little bit more gassed out than normal because this thing does not have another position or extra positions to kind of mitigate that gas flow. So unfortunately, like I told everybody else, you're gonna have to be really picky and choosy when it comes to what suppressors you use on this thing, because some suppressors may not work well with this thing. You might be gassed out completely to where a couple rounds may have your eyes teary-eyed. You might get annoyed. You might get some gas. What is that word? I seen somebody use it a couple days ago. But you build up pressure in your face. So that's not fun. I dealt with it with a couple of my other guns. That gas suppression only having 2 settings, it's kind of sucks. I mean, and as far as I know, there is no aftermarket fix for that. So once again, the 2 suppressor settings that you get, or the 2 gas settings that you get, that's all you're gonna get. You can't change it, can't do anything about it. It is what it is. The con for me would be the costs, man. This thing is not cheap. Now, granted, I told you guys I didn't pay MSRP. I didn't pay street price. I paid, I think, $2,200 for this thing, which wasn't really bad for me because my 300 blackout build cost me more to put together myself. So I was perfectly fine paying $2,200 for this thing as opposed to the $3 grand that it goes for at gun stores or anywhere else. So it is expensive. It's a very expensive gun. It doesn't come with a brace, by the way. So this entire back portion was funded by me. From my understanding, the original Spears LTs that they used to ship out used to come with a brace. I've known about the Spears for a couple years now. I've never seen it with a brace, but apparently people say that they used to come with one. But at the same time, I don't like Sig's braces. So it's not like I would have kept it anyway. So I'm kind of fine with them not coming with the brace. But this piece in the rear, this entire setup in the rear was funded by me. Right here, we have a Sig hinge setup. If you do get the longer Spear version, I think the 16-inch, you do get the stock little kind of flag S looking stock. It is metal, but it is kind of a flag stock. But this is a Sig hinge system right here because it does have a 1913 Picatinny area in the back of this. This is a J Mac Customs arm bar. This is their 9-inch variant. There has a cheek riser. I added that as well, also from J Mac. And this is a tail hook Mod 1C by Gearhead Works. So this entire setup was about $500. So again, it's not cheap at all. I mean, that's kind of the weak point on this gun. Again, this is a rear end muzzle device. You could have kept the regular one on, so I wouldn't really count it as a cost or a con. But for me, it was, like I said, a really expensive gun. This thing altogether is over 3K. This Romeo 4T Pro, I have a Unity riser on the top. Again, these are all costs that were accumulated after. The charging handle, the stock one on this thing was terrible, so I went ahead and changed that out. The safety switches on this thing was terrible, so I'm probably gonna change that out. The trigger on this thing isn't the best, so I'm gonna have to change that out too. The grip on this thing, I did order some Kung Fu grips. They just haven't shipped them out yet. I'm gonna change it to one of those, but the grip on this thing, it's cool, but could have been better. So again, the biggest con for me is probably the cost. I mean, this is not a cheap setup by any means, so I'm gonna ding it for that as well. With those cons, that's kind of where we're gonna get into the line being drawn between this piston-driven gun and a DI 5.56, because that's kind of where we get into, should you buy one of these or should you not? And I kind of have two different opinions on that. Let's get into that. So when we talk about if you should buy one of these things or not, it depends. What I mean by that is there's specific circumstances for this answer. In my humble opinion, if you're looking for a rifle as your first rifle, no, I would never recommend this as a first time rifle for anyone who has never used any AR of any kind. And the reason for that is not that this gun isn't reliable, because it has been for me. Over 500 rounds, it's functioned just fine. Haven't had any problems with this thing. Granted, there are some people who have reported, because Sig isn't perfect, and there have been people that have reported that out of factory, or I know early on there was a big scandal about the barrel shifting in these things, as well as the handguard kind of shifting as well. Some people, or the general consensus would be that it's due to the handguards and the barrel not being torqued to spec out of factory. When I found that out, I went ahead and had my homie who got me this gun, I had him do everything. So when he did the muzzle device for me, he torqued the barrel and the handguard down to spec. So I haven't had any problems with the shifting, but I know that was a big conversation when these came out. And just for that alone, I mean, granted, again, these are mechanical. This is a commercially sold gun. The civilian market can get their hands on these. They're not gonna be perfect, but the issue with this is that Sig wants, again, over $2,000 for this gun. And the fact of the matter is that if you want that much, this shit better be at least 95% perfect out of the box. Even with the little stuff I have to change on this thing, which is, again, you don't have to change them, but just for me, doing what I do all the time, I went ahead and changed it because I felt like it was worth it to change them. And just for long term, I wanted to go ahead and change it. But again, as a first AR, no, I could never recommend this thing. Mostly because if something happens with this, like I told you guys in the beginning, these parts are not always interchangeable. And the best thing about an AR-15 is that you can go and buy AR-15 parts anywhere. If you need a bolt, you can go get one. Charging handle, you can get one. Barrels, all kinds of other pieces, buffers, and all kind of stuff, because this is a bufferless system. It's piston driven. So because of that, there is no buffer tube in the rear. So this is proprietary. If this was to fail, you can't just go to a gun store and buy a MCX barrel, an MCX bolt. You can't go buy any of that stuff. This is stuff that you're either gonna have to send to Sig, or you're gonna have to go find a third party who may have those pieces in stock. So again, for a first time gun owner or a first time rifle owner, I could never recommend this thing. No, absolutely not. Not for a first time owner. No, definitely not. That being said, if you do own other direct impingement guns and you kind of want a niche gun, you kind of want something that can perform better than your DI guns, or you just want a gun that will kind of show you a little bit of a different perspective when it comes to rifles, then I absolutely can recommend this thing. This thing has been a monster for me. I love it. Suppressed, it's amazing. And it's also cool because due to it being piston driven, it shoots cleaner. It absolutely shoots cleaner. It stays cleaner when shooting suppressed, as opposed to where DI guns, you kind of have to tune them to be suppressed. They get dirty faster. I mean, just all the problems that come with shooting DI guns suppressed, you really don't have those issues on one of these or any piston gun for the most part. I mean, again, this thing is really, really cool. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, if you see it, I mean, this FDE 50 Shades of Peanut Butter kind of thing they got going on is, I mean, it's chef's kiss. It is really, really dope. I love this gun. If you're looking for something like that, I highly recommend it. They sell these things in black now too. So if you're into black guns, you're gonna be able to get one of these in black as well. I know some people who were waiting for the black variants and they never came out, so they just went ahead and got them Cerakoted. They look sexy as fuck in black. The only reason I didn't get the black one was because I have black guns galore already. I didn't want to do another black firearm. I wanted something that was different, and this fit the bill for me. So if you are looking for a niche gun, a gun that you can have some fun with at the range, shoot cleaner suppressed, you know, just have a ball with, I can absolutely recommend the Spear LT. I have a blast shooting this thing. I don't know what else to really say about it. This gun is a top. I love everything about it. I've seen some setups on this thing that is just divine. You really can't beat this, especially if you got some money to burn. Because again, they aren't cheap. These aren't cheap. But the fact of the matter is that, I don't know, man, you can't put a price tag on a smile. I'm just gonna throw that out there. So yeah, definitely recommend this for a niche rifle if you're looking for one of those. All right, y'all, so with that being said, this is my review on the Spear LT. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that little tidbit, the little conversation on this thing. If you guys liked it, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and appreciate y'all for tapping in with me. With that being said, y'all have a good day, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.